We good? Yep. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. We're going to get started here in about 1 minute if you want to grab food if you haven't already, and then find your seats.
Sounds good. All right. Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and today we are going to be walking through the Gospel Tech Family Framework. There should be a workbook in front of you. If you're watching this online, go to gospeltechworkshop.com, log yourself in, and at the bottom, it'll give you a little sign-in thing. Type Berean, and it'll give you a login for that. So that won't cost you the $50 that it shows on there. And that's true for anyone watching this recording too, so go get it. There'll be a PDF version of that on the website. That's true for everyone here. If you want to review this content, you can both watch the recording of this event right here, but you can also go to gospeltechworkshop.com, Berean at the bottom, and it'll give you a free license for this, where Digital Nathan will walk you through all the content as well. Because we're not going to hit every page of this workbook today. That would be tedious. We are going to hit the high points. We're going to walk through this process right now. So grab some food, back to your seats, and before we begin, I am going to start us off in prayer. It's okay. God can still hear when you're walking around, so I'm not going to wait for you guys to sit. Heads up. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this time. We praise you, Lord, for this opportunity to talk about technology and think through what does it look like to raise up youth who love you and use tech from that. Would you give me wisdom and discernment to be able to speak clearly, and by your Holy Spirit, would you open our ears to hear, our hearts to apply this information to our lives in loving and intentional ways. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen. All right. In those workbooks in front of you, the orange ones. Oh, sorry, a little context again. If you were not here yesterday, I have humans. They're a major reason of why I'm doing this. My 3 kiddos, Owen, Henry, and Hadley, are 9, 7, and 4. I am not presenting today because I have found the perfect recipe for perfect humans. They are very much not perfect. But I have learned a lot about how to do this well. I was also a middle school teacher for 10 years. And that is driving my passion for what we are doing today. If you were at yesterday's talks, you will hear some of the content repeated as we talk about just the context. Because let's be serious, we hung out last night, went to bed, and we're hanging out again. This has been a really action-packed last, 12 hours for us. So you will hear some of that here at the beginning as we set the context. Today, we're going to talk about healthy tech. We're going to make sure we understand how to understand and communicate the gospel, and then connect the hope of the gospel to our daily tech lives. That is our goal for today and the goal of gospel tech in general. If you open your books, we're going page 4 and 5. Looks like this. Looks like that. Today's conversation is split into 2 halves. First half of the conversation is how do we talk it out. It just says part 1, talk it out on that left side. How do we talk about technology? How do we think about it? Hopefully this feels like a little bit of review. And instead of Nathan talking, like I spoke a lot yesterday, This is going to be me kind of introducing a concept and then giving you time at your tables to write down your own ideas and make it apply to your families. Yesterday was kind of the introduction from 10,000 feet. Today is the brass tacks. How do we apply this in real life and make a family tech framework? You're going to walk out of here with understandings in 6 areas, 6 sentences for what your family stands for when it comes to content and safety and priorities when it comes to technology, and that is the second part. So first hour is just how do we wrap our brain around this practically, and the second hour is how do we apply that understanding. If you then would flip to the next page, you're going to see this. Start with a reflection. I actually want to give you a couple minutes. You'll see that there are 4 questions. What do I hope to gain from this process is question 1. Question 2, what are my favorite tech activities? 3, what do I think my family would say about my tech use? Yes, I like that one because I like asking your kids how you do with your tech. I like asking your spouse how you do with your tech. It tends to be they have a different perspective sometimes being outside of you. And last one, what do I think my family would say is most concerning? Would you take a minute on your own and write your answers to those? If you're sharing a book with a spouse, you may team answer. Ready, go. All right. So we finished the reflection part, And just like our experience yesterday, as we have been practicing, pairing and sharing is going to be a part of today's conversation, because the entire premise of making a family tech framework is for you to actually walk this out yourself. So, I'm only going to make you share number one, and if you feel so inclined, your favorite tech. I'm not going to make you share what you think your family would say about it, but if you're feeling brave, you may. So if you did not already share with your elbow partner, this would be your time to do it. If you already have, find someone else at your table to share your favorite tech and what you're looking for out of this conversation. You got 60 seconds. Go. Okay, thank you. You guys are pretty good at talking this early in the morning. I'm excited about that. That bodes well for us. All right. Would anyone be willing to share? What are you hoping to get so that I can hear a couple? What are you hoping to get out of this morning? Anyone willing to share? I know, shouting out a big group. Okay. Tools to apply tech-safe, tech-productive habits in the family. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. A balance between the tech world and the peace that we want for our family and our own personal hearts. Thank you. Yes. That's amazing. I believe this is designed exactly to do those two things. So that's exciting, and I would love your feedback at the end to make sure it has. That is our goal for today. You will see if you flip to the next page, it says frequently asked questions. We are not going through this together right now. For just the sake of time, I believe in your reading efforts and that you can return to that. So you can dog-ear that page. But questions like, why is tech use such a big deal? Isn't it unhealthy tech just a teen thing? What does research tell us about tech and health? So that's help you set some context, know a little bit more of what's going on in the background of this conversation. But we're not going to run through it, and you did hear some of it yesterday. So what we're actually going to do is flash forward. And we're going to remind ourselves of why we're here. I'm not going to run you through the whole thing. If you weren't here yesterday, though, just know that the reason I'm doing this talk is because 11 and a half years ago, the Lord convicted me that my gaming was out of tone with His call on my life, that I was looking to video games to be my hope. I wasn't using them from the hope I have in Christ. And what that looked like in my life was I was constantly looking for when I could get back to video games. So yesterday I shared a little bit, but the basic idea was I was pivoting in my life. I was getting through the important things, relationships with other people. I didn't say this yesterday, but when my wife would go on road trips with friends, I did a little dance in my heart because that meant the cat was out and the mouse could play. And that meant that 12-hour gaming binges were going to come my way, right? Like that was going to be my full day because one doesn't need sleep or food when one has excellent video games. And that became something that as a 28-year-old, I was realizing I was no longer in control. The Lord was laying some things on my heart, and my response was always, well, I don't have time. I can't do that, Lord, because look how busy I am. And He graciously removed my video games. And that's not against video games. If you are healthful with gaming and you are faithful to the Lord's call, please enjoy them. I believe there are people in this world who can design games, play games, and be a part of a digital world in a healthy way. In that area, I could not be. It directly relates to me being here in front of you, because 11 and a half years ago, the Lord asked me if I trust him more than I love my games. I gave him a begrudging yes and asked him to prove it, and he very faithfully did. So when we have this conversation, I want to challenge you that there may be an area of life, it might not be video games, it might not be social media. In fact, it may not be technology. I don't know. I will tell you that when we listen to the Lord and give up things that feel really important to us and we feel scared to release them, but we feel convicted to let them go, I would just challenge you to simply trust him in that and to take those next faithful steps. Not because you know where it ends. I had no idea I was going to be running a nonprofit when I made that decision. I didn't even know I was going to be working with youth in Young Life. All I knew was I wouldn't be playing games, and then I took a step. And then my life blew up for a full 2 years, and then I took a step. And then I started a nonprofit half-time, a little bit of trust, just enough. And I did that for 3 years. And then at June 2019, I stepped out of the classroom. By the way, didn't know COVID was coming. I started a nonprofit based around public speaking. And then 2020, my life blew up again. Not as bad as it did that first time, but it did blow up. And I spent 2 years in my garage. Now, I know a lot of you work at home. I didn't work in a garage office. I worked next to my lawnmower and my rake in an uninsulated garage in Washington State, listening to the rain pitter-patter on my walls and door for months on end. It was pretty dark, physically and emotionally. And yet, that directly led me to starting Gospel Tech, a ministry to help families love God and use tech, which brought me here to Pennsylvania, by the way. When people are like, where are you speaking next? And I'm like, Pennsylvania. They're like, why? I'm like, I don't exactly know. There isn't a direct line. This isn't an excellent, marketing situation. It's not because Nathan's an awesome business person. Oh, fun fact. I ADD and not an entrepreneur at heart. I get zero energy from starting businesses. I know there's some serial entrepreneurs in the room where you're like, I make businesses and crush things with my mind vice. That's not me. It makes me tired. I love speaking with people. You don't get to speak to a lot of people during COVID while starting a nonprofit. And yet, the premise of this story is the Lord is faithful in the faith we give him. It's not because I had a beautiful golden vision 20 years ago. Sometimes, when you get introduced on a podcast or in one of these, it can sound like that. 9 years ago, Nathan had a dream, and he's made it happen. Go, Nathan. That's not the case. 9 years ago, Nathan was like, really? Do I have to? And the Lord's like, no. Do you trust me? I'm like, well, okay, I can do that. And that's the point. In this, it's not do you know everything about tech? Can you fix your kid? Can you do that? Do you trust the Lord? And will you take that next faithful step? So you're here. For many of you, that's an amazing faithful step. This is not easy to show up on a Saturday, especially when you guys have some of your kids with you. Also not easy. That's a big win. So our next piece, give me a moment. I timed out my handpiece. Here we go. So again, games are awesome. God is way better. And the question is, do we trust him? So talk it out. Flip that page. We ended with the gospel yesterday. We're starting with it today, a nice little sandwich for us. The gospel is the good news that God saves sinners. There's that blank that is circled. The gospel is the good news that God saves sinners. I referenced the same verses today that we talked about yesterday. Ephesians 2, 1 through 10 is our text for this. Ephesians 2, 1 and 3, as for you, you were dead in your transgressions and sins. All of us also lived among them at one time, gratifying the cravings of our flesh and following its desires and thoughts. Like the rest, we were by nature deserving of wrath. I want to start there because if you don't understand the problem, you will never find the right solution. If you don't believe you need a Savior, this is where Jesus says, I didn't come for the well, but for the sick. He wasn't saying that there was anyone who was doing okay apart from him. He's saying if you don't realize you've got a problem, there's no reason to repent. And if you don't repent, you don't put on the bride clothes of Christ, there is no salvation available. That's really important when we talk about this conversation. We're gospel tech in this conversation because the gospel has to come first. That's our foundation for building healthful tech. If there is no God, if there is no redemption in Christ, then honestly being safe and happy is a pretty good alternative. just distract yourself into oblivion, right? There's a woman who makes the argument that what the world actually needs is more gaming because you think less about the world's problems and more about yourself, and it stops you from doing toxic, harmful social things. Okay. I mean, it's an opiate for the masses in that argument. I could see that if there's no greater purpose. But in light of there being a greater purpose, in light of the fact that we feel that holy discontent with the way the world is going, with what we see our hearts doing, then we need a solution for that. And that is the gospel, which brings us to Ephesians 2:4. But God, being rich in mercy, because of the great love with which he loved us, even when we were dead in our trespasses, made us alive together with Christ. By grace you have been saved. This is the foundation for our conversation because it starts with God. This idea of like, well, how can I see hope in this? How can I help my child when I've made such mistakes? How can I fill in the blank? The whole point is not that you are good enough to raise up a child who's as good as you. The premise is you're not good enough. You don't raise up a child to be like you raise up a child to be like Christ. When we talk about raising up a child in the way they should go, it doesn't mean have good enough rules and then your child will be good enough. If that was true, we wouldn't need a New Testament. The Old Testament rules are good. They are righteous. They do work. You just can't do them. That's where the whole Holy Spirit piece comes in. That's why Jesus said, it's better that I leave you because I'm going to send one to you who will help you. Think about that statement. Jesus goes, the reason I'm not setting up shop right now is it's better that I go away because I'm going to send you the Holy Spirit who will indwell you, and every one of you will become a temple indwelled by the living God and therefore become the hands and feet of Christ to work for the world, not be saved from it. And that is our premise in this, is that idea of like, all right, if I'm then indwelled by the living God with a changed heart, what does that look like when I go on Twitter? What's that look like when I go on my video games? What's that look like when I engage music and shows and talk about with my friends? From what I celebrate to how I interact to how I repent and say sorry when I make mistakes, like what does it look like to take Jesus into those spaces? That's our conversation basis for today, which brings us to 3 questions, but we're only going to do questions 1 and 2. At least those are what we're going to discuss out loud. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. Write your responses. Question 1 is in your own words, what is the gospel? Question number 2, based on that conversation, I want you to extrapolate. What's the problem with behavior modification? What's the problem with just trying to fix our kids in light of the gospel? Go. And now that you're wrapping up those written thoughts, turn to either your elbow partner, unless you've already murmured your thoughts, Then find someone new at your table and take 1 minute to share your answers on 1 and 2. What is the gospel and what's the problem with behavior modification? Go. Thank you for sharing those. We're going to take that conversation directly to our second part. If you flip the page. What are the two types of tech that should sound familiar? Tool and drool. I heard it. You can write them down. What is tool tech? ChatGPT. Ooh, hot take, huh? Certainly can be. Yeah, I think there's a lot of, it's not today's conversation, but I think there's going to be a lot of benefit from AI. I think we could have vetted it a little more thoroughly before releasing it to the public. I mean, we didn't, for example, realize that it was also a full research-grade chemist before we just put it on the internet. You may not have known that either. I didn't know until Tristan Harris said, hey, did you guys know we released an AI that's a research-grade chemist just to the internet? What that means is it knows how to put things together that you usually wouldn't want the public to just have access to. ChatGPT absolutely can be tool tech. Tool tech, again, doesn't mean good tech. It just means that it helps you do whatever it is you want to do. If you want to do a lot of chemically bad things, you can do that with ChatGPT very effectively. Yes. Stop motion is amazing. Like making Lego stop motion videos, super hard to do. I had a kid do that for a book project one time. He's like, it took me 9 hours to make this 3-minute video. Absolutely. So we have tool tech that helps us create. What's drool tech do? Yes. It distracts. And it's designed for that. That's the point of it. And it doesn't make it bad. Sometimes we want to be distracted. We can go in eyes open knowing that with our parameters and our healthy tech choices. But we know that drool tech is designed to take our time, our focus, and our money. It makes income off getting us to stay longer than we planned, or to get us to return more often than we wanted, or to pay for something because it's a quality of life improvement. So of course, instead of waiting 24 hours to take my next turn in this game, I'll pay $3 to get it all now. That would be examples of drool tech. So we have tool tech and drool tech, and our conversation then today is, all right, there's some research down below you'll see, footnoted. If you're using the PDF, you can click on those and they'll take you to the links. But our conversation is going to simply be, as we think through our tech that we're using, as we think through the tech that we might struggle with most at home, is it possible that email is one of those? Yeah. And that would be an example of tool tech that we can use inappropriately. I sometimes struggle with just wanting to know that next thing that's coming on my work side, right? I love booking workshops, and I book them mostly through email. That's a conversation someone will reach out, and we will work it in to the calendar. We're booking out to November. I love that. That's super exciting to me. It can be really inappropriate to check that at bedtime or family time or family vacation in California when I stuck my laptop into the other room like a creep and was responding to work emails. Okay? That's weird. That's email. Not email's fault, my fault. That's tool tech being misused by a heart. Was I leveraging my ability? Yes. Was it healthy? No. Drool tech then is when it's coming in and I'm getting usually notifications, or there's levels, or there's some kind of follower or fear of missing out or behavioral design that's hooking me in and I'm getting practice. I'm practicing reps of needing something that I never even wanted. And that's what we're also looking for, is where is that popping up in our life? So the questions we're tackling on this one are simply going to be questions 1 and 3. You're welcome to answer more than that, but those are the ones I'm giving you time for. We're going to go 2 minutes for you to write your response and 1 minute to share with your neighbor. I'll cue you for the 1 minute part. Ready, go. What are we on here? We're on page 21 and 22 for that. Turn to your neighbor if you have not yet. Share your answers for 1 and 3. Go. Thank you. Are there any questions at this point? Anything we need to address as for many of you, what is review from yesterday, which is amazing? Okay, if you do have any questions, either related to what we're discussing right now or just bigger picture, the Q&A box is still over here. We are going to be so we'll do this tech framework, take a break, then we'll come back and we'll talk about how do we build tech trust, both preemptively, before trust has been lost, and we'll talk about how we can rebuild it if it's been lost, and the Q&A part will be at the end of that. So that's when we'll tackle those. You may ask a question right now.
How do you speak to, there's drool tech in video games, right?
Yeah.
There's also, in today's world with kids, the social aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
There's a competitive aspect of it if you're going to be with your friends doing something, right? So it's kind of moving the football game or the game of tag that you would do in a neighborhood into the social realm. How do you talk about, like, is that fact or fiction to you? And, like, how do you...
Yeah, great question. So the question was, how do we process this idea that, for example, video games, a drool tech piece of technology, can be a lot of other things. It can be a sport. I mean, esports are a real thing. Being a professional gamer is now it's a viable, real thing. Cannot deny that. I mentioned yesterday, Washington State, where I live, is bringing that in as a varsity sport in our high schools. So that is real. And it's also a social aspect. Sometimes that's where the friends are, so we need to go in these spaces in order to belong with our friends. While this is a bigger answer, and I think we could return to it in our Q&A time, so I'll say this. As long as it's really a game, then we can establish that. It has a challenge, it has a set of rules we're following, and it can be beaten. It is a game then. There are some things that are not games. They're digital worlds you can enter. They're something other than a game, and we just need to recognize them for what they are. They're a social media platform with avatars that happens to also have levels. They are different, so recognize that. The second is, remember that these are digital cul-de-sacs we're sending our kids into. They're usually based off the internet, so unless you're bringing people over to your house and you're all playing a Switch, for example, on the same screen, that's different than, well, I have to be with my friends, I have to be alone. I have to be on my own Xbox and my own Xbox Live account so that I can go hang out with my friends. That's often the situation the internet puts us in right now. It doesn't mean that's where it will be forever, but many of these games you have to be alone in order to be together. An example would be I have a 10-year-old family friend who wanted for his birthday to play video games with his friends. That meant all of his friends had to be at their own respective houses on their own separate internets so they could all play this game together. That is interesting because I was asked at an event, how can I replace the quantity and the quality of my friends if I don't have social media or video games? An awesome question coming from a high school young man. The answer is, when we talk about quality, what are you using to gauge the quality of those friendships? The premise of a friend is this is someone who can do life with you. This is a biblical example going all the way back to Jonathan and David. This is someone who can be there in life's hard times. Yes, people on the internet can do that. The downside is, family member gets sick. Can that person come over and support you? They can probably Uber Eats you some food. Some of them can absolutely pray with you, pray for you, be present with you. But there are times where digital relationships are based around convenience, more than twice. I have seen people go to digital spaces because that's where my friends are, and they realize they were actually only another member in a guild. They were just another rank in a boss fight. They weren't actually a friend. So when they leave and they go, hey, can we go play that other game? The friends go, no, we don't play that game. When they go, hey, can we come hang out and just spend some time together? No, let us know when you're ready for the next thing. And that person realized that they were actually just a friend of convenience. It just happened to be our common goal was actually this video game, and you just were an accessory to that. It is difficult. We see this happen in church spaces. I'm a member of this church online. Ooh, pastor said something I don't like. I now go to this church because I typed in a different web address. I don't have to be vulnerable. I don't have to be known. I don't have to repent. I don't have to be exposed or committed. I'm not saying that happens all the time. I think there's some wonderful online church options. People are streaming this right now, and I think that's beautiful. And I think it can be dangerous when we think all of our friends are in this digital space, and therefore I belong, because sometimes we can belong without being known, and that isn't relationship. So that would be when we talk about quality. When it comes to quantity, I don't think you can replicate the quantity of friends you can have online in real life, and I don't think you should. I think if you can find yourself in life with 1 to 3 friends, you're going to do great. Research supports this. Anywhere under a dozen is an amazing amount of real-life friends. I think if the internet is supporting real-life relationships so that you're playing games with people you know in real life, that's awesome. I think if you know the people in real life that you play online video games with, meaning you met them through the interwebs, and now you meet them in real life, adults only, please, 13-year-olds, don't go find and meet that online friend you made. Maybe if your parents are involved and there's some vetting and safety checking, but please be safe and wise about that. I think that is our next conversation of how do we make sure that these relationships are building real-life friendship, that are teaching and investing and modeling what Jesus teaches us about discipleship and friendship. And I am concerned that when relationships become convenient, they can become disposable. And I want that investment aspect. So can video games produce real friendship? Sure. Would that be my number one encouragement for young people? No. Would I say that your kid has to play video games because that's where all their friends are? I would say if your child is hanging out with people who refuse to make space in their real lives for actual communion and real-life physical contact, they may not be friends. They may just be people with common interests. You find that in sports, by the way. You can join sports teams that are select teams because, wow, such a great group of kids, but they never invest in your child outside of when they have to be there for that sport. I think it's the same thing. I think in the digital world, it's just a little easier to hop from group to group for convenience because they didn't match up with exactly what you wanted in this moment. And it's just that little bit simpler to be fickle. And so that would be my short answer on that. You should hear the long one. But I hope that split that guy again. Is there anything else I want to add to that? Okay. I have other words, but I'm gonna move on for now. We're going to then look at moving on from tool and drool tech to this idea of how do we know if it's healthy. So we're going to skip through the first part of the reset. We're all familiar with that. We're looking at the reset page. This is on page 26 and 27. How do I know if my tech use is healthy? We talked about the acronym RESET yesterday. Relationships and responsibilities, enjoyment, sleep, emotions, and time. The reason we care about this is what I call the pebble in the blister. The pebble in the blister meaning, just because your child, you read through that and you go, oh, you know what, my kid struggles with their relationships when they engage this game. They struggle with their emotions, right? This social media platform, every time they go to it, they come away more isolated or more angsty or more withdrawn, or it becomes the only thing they care about and everything else wilts in that super cool focus they have, or engagement, or gregarious attitude. Whatever that cool thing God's gifted your child for, wilts. And this piece of tech becomes the preeminent thing in their life, and the only time they come alive is when they talk about it or engage it. Right? We can see that. So you've noted that that's true in your child, but now you're like, all right, but what do I do? Right? I want to just throw this thing in a lake and never deal with it again. And sometimes that might be the right answer. But we need to recognize that there is a difference between a pebble and a blister. And that image comes from my two kids. Hadley was 3. She was running around the cul-de-sac last summer. She ran up to me, Dad, my foot hurts. Pull off her shoe, and she has a little piece of pea gravel jammed in that delightfully pudgy little 3-year-old foot of hers. Take out the pea gravel, put the shoe back on, send her back out, and she's perfectly fine. Problem done, foot no longer hurts, healthy young girl. Henry was 6, runs up to me, Dad, my foot hurts. A little bit of a different story. Henry had been running through the sprinkler in the backyard with shoes on but no socks. Pull off his shoe, and he's got a silver dollar-sized blister on the bottom of his foot. I cannot just remove it and send him back into the cul-de-sac. Right? So we both have pain. One pain was caused by a pebble. Remove the pebble, problem's done, go back to your healthy little life. But sometimes the pain is actually showing a different rub. It's a different friction. And we see unhealthy tech, but the cause isn't the tech itself. Right? The blister's not the actual problem. It's because my son was running with wet feet and no socks. It's going to take a couple weeks to recover from that size of a blister before he's fully functional. I've seen this with young men, 2 of them, and it's this reference in scenario 1 and 2 on the right side there. The first, actually one of, same year, a 9th grader and an 11th grader, both failing 4 out of 6 classes, both of them related to technology. One young man has AirPods in all day long, and he's streaming YouTube, watching gaming videos. He wakes up early, he goes to school with the AirPod in, just has the phone on his lap. He comes home, and that's basically all he does. He's dropped his favorite sport, which is golf. He is failing 4 out of 6 classes. Pretty clear-cut case. Obviously, YouTube. 9th grade young man, I taught in 8th grade, but in 9th grade, would get called in for a teacher conference with the grandparents, like he's failing 4 out of 6 classes. We've removed all of his gaming devices. He doesn't have his Xbox, his PlayStation, his PC. He doesn't have his Switch any longer. He comes home, eats a meal, goes to his room, and that's it. That's interesting because I have him in 3rd period, and he sleeps every single day. So he's clearly not asleep in there. Well, it turns out he was gaming. He had 500 gaming apps on his phone. So, gaming. This should be, like, that seems apples and apples here. Both of them just need less tech, and we'll be fine, except in the one case, the young man, junior in high school, with YouTube, it was, in fact, just an unhealthy, he had been playing a game, he'd realized that was unhealthy, so he's like, I'll just watch. And it was still way too much for him. He just couldn't break the joy and fixation that this brought him, and it made everything else dwindle. So for him, YouTube went away, and by the time he rejoined golf and got a scholarship to go to college and was on traveling trips with his team, he was the only kid not on a smartphone because he didn't have one. He opted out personally in college. and did great. Won some regional tournaments on the West Coast and enjoyed his college experience, but without a smartphone and without being able to stream gaming videos. Pebble, gone. The other young man, it turns out in further conversation, was gaming too much, but had another little situation that had happened. His dad had just moved home. Now, his dad had left when he was 2. He's 15 in 9th grade. His dad moved into the garage of the grandparents' house with his girlfriend and dog and was slinging dope to the neighborhood kids. That garage was on the other side of the wall of this young man's bedroom. So he would come home, and 4 feet away from him is a man who calls himself dad. He had no relationship and was actually quite angry with, but had no words in 9th grade to process that conversation. Video games were not the cause of that young man's issues. If you just ripped away video games and said, be better, and never addressed this father issue with professional counseling and care, he's going to find something else to medicate with. Is it needing to be addressed? Yes, his unhealthy gaming needed to be addressed, but it was symptomatic of something much, much bigger in his life. With our young people, we need to recognize that. You have something wrong with your time or your sleep or your enjoyment. Okay, is it because you're being bullied or are a bully? Have you seen something traumatic or done something traumatic? Are you ashamed of something that you did or has been done to you? And if so, how do we need to address that? And if not, what do we need to do to simply remove the pebble? Sometimes it means just play a different game, use a different app. Sometimes it means, no, this is unhealthy enough. We need a full step back for 30 days for our brains to recalibrate to the pace of real life, and then we're going to slowly start to introduce, so just like you would with a diet, right? We're going to remove all allergen opportunities and then introduce them one at a time. We'll start with eggs. We'll start with bread. We're going to find out what is the thing that's causing this inflammation and this issue in your life. And the same thing is with the reset. So parents, remember, when we find it, this isn't our opportunity to say, aha, gotcha. You're never using it again. The point is, hey, this is unhealthy. Let's take a greater look and see. Is something mentally or emotionally off kilter or out of place? And how can I support and love you well in that? Which brings us to the assessment. Flip that page. I do need to make one note. This was caught right after I printed these. It has been fixed. If you're using the online PDF, it won't make sense to you. But on that page, you're going to see, does my tech impede? You should write improve there. Would you fix that for me? Because otherwise the yes-no categories will not make sense. I got really excited when writing this. So, does my tech impede on 28? Does my Drool Tech impede my? It should say, does my Drool Tech improve my? If you fix that, the yes category will make sense. I have, again, since fixed it. That was an awkward moment when that was picked up. I tell you guys, it's a very humbling process doing this work. It was, fortunately, that was only like a 400-book run. So it wasn't a big one, but it was just like a raised hand, yes. And they're like, typo. I'm like, oh, dang. All right. And yes, professional people looked at this. We all missed it. I apologize. So we've got that, though, and this is the opportunity for you to walk through for yourself and then ask a family member. If you don't want to fully circle, you can put a check mark and ask someone else to put a star. I am going to give you a chance to do that right now. So take a minute, run through those questions for your relationships and responsibilities, enjoyment, sleep, emotions, and time. Go. And thank you for already moving to your partner share. That's amazing. Look at you guys. A well-oiled learning machine. Beautiful job. What I would ask you to do is simply, here, I'll actually show you here. Simply turn to your neighbor and answer, if you haven't yet, what scored well? What was in the yes category? This improves. And was there anything that needs your attention for just your side? I know many of us probably ran a different symbol for our sibling. If you have not yet, share with your elbow partner or one other person at your table what'd you do well in and what's one area that you're like, this is an interesting area for further discussion. Go ahead. Okay. Thank you. We have now made it through the first half of this conversation, the talk it out portion. There are still pages left. If you want to talk about removing and replacing, that's in here. If you want to talk about the whys, there's some research on there, some stuff we talked about yesterday. How do you support your family? But when we come back, what we're going to be talking through is the putting it into practice side, starting on page 46. If you want to scan ahead, I'm going to give you 5 minutes to stretch your legs. You can fill out some Q&A cards. You can get some water, use the restroom, and we'll come back and tackle the second part of this. Great job, everyone. All right, let's get back to our seats. Here we go, round 2. Making the framework. Before we do, I want to quickly touch on the kind of the big picture of what we're doing here. This idea of building a hedge. So how do we use our tech well? We build a hedge. I like the picture of a hedge because hedges are not permanent walls. The idea is not tech-proofing your kid. It is making them tech-resilient. You're putting some space between them and harmful inputs, bad decisions, making good decisions easier to make. And the first thing we're going to do is put a hedge around our network. I mentioned this yesterday, but to go into it a little bit, 2 options that are awesome. If you like your router already, the thing that's giving your home Wi-Fi, use something like Bark Home. Bark Home plugs into the router you've already got. It provides you some lovely parenting tools, like the ability to set individual times for devices, so you can put things to sleep, you can block certain websites, and you can also see what's happening on your Wi-Fi. So when a friend comes over and logs their personal device, like their gaming console or that burner phone that doesn't have cell access on its own, you'll see that thing log into your internet. So there's at least some accountability for what's happening. Let me go back. The Griffin router is the actual physical router. It's the thing that sends the internet out. It's now available through Best Buy as of last month. They are growing rapidly. 2 benefits of a Griffin router. 1, a really strong personal encryption for your network. It will work if you've made your own network. You just need a switch and you can plug that thing directly into your own personal network. It will still function on there. Personal encryption meaning if you have a nanny cam because you have a baby and you don't like to walk in and wake up your baby to make sure he or she is okay, this stops people on just your local cul-de-sac from logging into your Wi-Fi and seeing through your camera. So I do like just the personal encryption side of things, but it also comes with the ability to set categories. There's 4 categories of tech. So you have everything from your Roomba and your LED lights that run off your Wi-Fi to your Nest to your personal laptop and your work devices, your smart TVs. You can then set personal privacy settings based on where you drag and drop those different devices. It does take some setup, like you'll have to actually say what device is which and what that should fit under. It also provides a category for guests, so a babysitter comes over, wants to use your Wi-Fi, you can have a different setting that allows guests to log in and use the internet, but have certain restrictions as well. So the most robust approach to family safety when using technology that's Wi-Fi connected is the Griffin router. If you really like the router you already have, you can go Bark Home. There's 2 versions of the Griffin router right now. Newest one is about $280, and the older one's about $180. The newest one, though, is wicked fast internet. Yes? Yeah, so for your network, Griffin router is if you need, like I had an old T-Link Google router, and I needed a new router, so I got the Griffin router, because it was time for an upgrade anyway. And by the way, my 100 megabit internet tripled in speed because apparently my old router was just dead and old and terrible. So I really appreciate that. But if you like your router, you just got one or you're using the one from Comcast or whatever and it works fine, then Bark Home is a great option for protecting your home network. It's a little more robust than that Comcast network safety settings. It's a great option for keeping your network safe. But that won't protect devices that have cell service on their own. So when we build a hedge around our personal devices then, we have a hedge around our network that protects our home. And as I said yesterday, smartphones are for keeping you communicating when you're away from home. When you get home, your smart devices need to go away. It needs to be a practice we get in the habit of. I'm not speaking of your kids at prom and you need to have your phone on you in case something goes on. I understand there's days and times, siblings. I have 4 sisters. They have lots of humans. Every time my sister has a child, I have my smartphone on me while at home. It stays in my room to make sure I can hear it. But that's not an average day. We need to get in the habit of breaking some of the behavioral training. I just saw a stat this morning that 89% of the contact that we use with our phones is self-inflicted, which means simply turning off our notifications only fix 11% of our contact time with our smartphones, right? 9 out of 10 times we touch our phone is because we want to. The best way to fix that is get it out of sight. There are some other options. I just dropped mine in a drawer. You can do whatever you would like, but the idea here is smart devices need their own protection. Bark is a great option, especially on youth phones and personal computers at home. I'll walk through it again later, but Bark provides us the opportunity to have notifications when things go wrong, based on searches, based on conversations, based on content they're engaging online. Bark does a great job of providing trust. You're not reading their digital diary, but it also provides communication, and it's a digital dog to go into that digital cul-de-sac. Covenant Eyes is great for pornography, both looking at what is viewed. So on PCs and on Android devices, the Google phone, Samsung phones, it actually takes screenshots of everything from text messages that come across to the shows that are watched, to games that are played. Everything that comes across the screen will be scanned, and if something questionable shows up, it just kicks you a little image and says, hey, check this out, and have that conversation. Again, the point is not to drop the hammer or to have some third party make sure you're always making good choices. As I like to say it, I use Covenant Eyes. 99% of the time, I want to make good choices that line up with who God's called me to be and the husband I want to be. 1% of the time, you get that perfect storm of anxiety and sleep and stress and loneliness, and you make or want to make a stupid choice. That is your purview. You are an adult. You may make stupid choices, but someone you love and who cares about you will also see it, and that's fantastic. The number of times that just is enough to break that lie of anonymity, that you're not actually alone. God sees everything, but sometimes that doesn't feel tangible. But someone who cares about you seeing it as well, that can be tangible. And so Covenant Eyes is great for that. It's not to shame people. It's not to make them feel bad about themselves. It's to remind them that they're not alone. And that's both loving and true. Yes? Yeah, sure. And yeah, that's great. So there's certainly workarounds. He was just saying he keeps different devices so he can physically put away a work device and then pull out a personal device that fits more with what he wants for his family and time. There's lots of creative ways to do it, and Gab Wireless is one of those. Gab Wireless being a dumb phone. There's no app store. There's no browser. I love that as an option. The Bark phone's also a great option because it scales well. So if you have a kid who does want a smartphone and they're turning 15, you're like, what's a good trainer phone? Gab is a great spot to start, but the Bark phone is a great scaling phone. I personally like it better than like an iPhone that's locked down because iPhones can be tricky. They can be, kids who want to make mistakes can make mistakes on anything, but Bark makes it hard to make that mistake using the Bark phone. They can find it in other ways still, I promise. So we want to make good decisions easy, and here's what I mean. Bark and the Bark phone there on the right, the Griffin router, Covenant Eyes, and, the Gab phone is that last one on the bottom right. So those are some options. We talk about building a hedge, making some space around our devices, around our network, and the thing we're going to do together now is building a hedge around our family. That's what this tech framework is actually intended to be. If you want some more conversation on this, episode 142, 139, and 121 in the Gospel Tech podcast. Those are some options you can go listen. Just write down the number and you can find it anywhere podcasts are streamed. You can also find it on gospeltech.net. Just click on podcasts and it'll be there for you. So, now we're building a hedge around our family. I did forget this. IT support. Some people think that because I talk about tech all the time that I know all the things to know about how to set up networks and how to set privacy settings. I mentioned before, ADD. I can get you there on a lot of it. It won't be in a straight line. However, Chris McKenna with Protect Young Eyes is a CPA with Ernst & Young who retired and started working in tech with youth. Amazingly organized. The man lives in Excel spreadsheets. You want this guy to run your tech for you. So please, Google Protect Young Eyes or just PYE and look up the Ultimate Guide to Routers. And he'll tell you how to set up your router with pictures and lists and clickable links. It's delightful. Android parental controls or iPhone. If you don't know how to set up your phone for safety and it's already what you've got, he will walk you through it. It's what I use. I was going to make all of these, and then I found his while doing research on it, and I was like, well, why would I make this? This is way more organized, and it's already done. So I just vet his stuff for him. Way to go, Chris. I approve. If you turn in your books to 53, 2 feet and 3. We have 6 areas we're going to be going through. Ground rules, time, place, content, and priorities and safety will be joined together. And we're going to do 3 things for each of these. I'll introduce the idea. You at your table will highlight the things you like, because every one of these is going to be about making a framework for your family. So in the area of ground rules, you're going to say, hey, this rule applies to our family. We need it. It's going to help us do better. You're going to cross out the ones you don't. Young people, this is especially important for you. You might see a rule or expectation on there and be like, no, that's not reasonable, it's not beneficial, it's not going to fit for our family, we won't be able to do it. By the way, don't pick rules you can't do. There's no point of having a rule that you know you're not going to keep up. So maybe something else needs to change, but that rule will not be beneficial for you other than as a talking point. And then add anything that you think is going to be helpful that I might not have added. Maybe I didn't think of it because I don't have your life, and I didn't have that circumstance come to mind. But we're going to do that for each of them. So if you flip the page, I'll show you what I mean. Ground rules. Ground rules, I'm just going to read through them. It says, I agree that. And again, you're going to highlight or circle the things you like, cross out the ones you don't. Here we go. All expectations made in this framework apply to all family members. That would be a ground rule you could select for your family. Ground rule 2, I'm called to act with the other's best interest at heart. I'm fighting for my family, not with them. I'm fighting anything that will distract or destroy my potential in Christ. That might be a ground rule you want. Number 3, anything that distracts or destroys my potential will be removed and replaced with something better. Number 4, unhealthy tech use is anything that distracts or damages my ability to enjoy God, love others, or take part in the work God has made for me to do. I like this one specifically in my life. This would be one that I'd say yes, because it's tangible. It's a talking point. When my child is doing something that detracts from their ability, I don't go, oh, I hate that piece of technology. Get off my lawn, right? That's not what I'm doing. I'm saying, hey, I love you, and this isn't helping. Or if it is, I grossly misunderstand the benefit. Could you walk me through it? Right? That's a wonderful talking point as a parent, is ask a question. Like, hey, I'm seeing this thing detract from you. Am I seeing that right? Are you seeing that? By the way, parents, most kids understand when they're not healthy. They just don't know what to do with it. And that's where we want to come in. We are not trying to just prove where they're unhealthy. Most kids are like, I get it. I see that. But now what? This talking point then is the kickoff for that conversation. It's the common ground to say, we both understand there is a problem. We may not agree on the solution. Let's work on that. That's the point of having ground rules. Number 5, reset, is a way to gauge health in 5 critical areas. When tech use negatively impacts any of these areas, my family will make changes out of love and in support of me becoming all I'm created to be in Christ. Number 6, family members will self-monitor, which means I will know my limits, self-report mistakes, assess health using reset, understand my success is connected to my potential in Christ, not just willpower or good choices. That last one being making a mistake doesn't make us a mistake. And that when children self-report, we're not going to react. Let's just say there's a different standard for self-reporting because you've at least proved trustworthiness in reporting. That's positive. Yes, you made a mistake, but you brought it to me. That's different than me having to find this out for myself. I like that one as well. Number 7, a tech fast can be applied if tech is too much of a distraction. 8, in Jesus, I'm a new creation. This must be reflected in how and why I use my tech. We have 8 options. Circle the ones you like. Cross out the ones you don't. Add any that I might have missed, but that are going to be important for your family, and do this with them, and then I'll provide it some time for discussion. You've got 4 minutes to run through those, and then I'll bump you in for another couple minutes at the bottom for the conversation piece. Go ahead and begin. All right, turn to that elbow partner. You'll see those questions at the bottom for discussion. You've got 2 minutes to discuss with your table. The ground rules, what are you going to keep? What are you going to change for ground rules in your family? Go. A quick note. Put stars next to just your favorite 3. If you picked more than 3 that you liked, pick your 3 favorite. It will help you as we move forward, because the point is, while having 8 awesome ones is really good, you're never going to use all 8. Pick your top 3, because we're actually going to condense it down to a sentence or 2 at the end of this. And 3 could kind of be condensed into a single sentence if we use our word jujitsu right. Take 30 seconds, put your stars next to them, and then we're going to move on to the next one. Okay. Brave volunteers, would anyone say which ground rule was going to be easiest for you, personally for you and your family? Which of those ground rules? Easy breezy, you basically already do it. None of them. That's all right. Any of them going to be the most challenging? Number one. Is it the apply to the whole family part, or is it the apply to guest part? Okay. Apply to the whole family. It is tricky, right? We set up standards for our kids that we don't get to just be like, well, I'm your dad. Of course I get to eat ice cream out of the container. Which, by the way, I was told I'd get to do when I'm a dad. That was a lie. I tried it. My wife's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I'm a dad. I'm going to eat ice cream. Like, no, put that in a bowl like a human. I'm like, oh, come on. Expectations in technology, we don't just get to pull the dad card and be like, well, I'm a dad, so I get to watch this show all day and ignore you guys. We got to expect our children to follow our example, not just our words. And does it mean that there might be some things outside of what we let our 8-year-old do? Sure, you're going to stay up later. You're going to maybe play or engage some things that isn't appropriate for them, but the heart is going to be the same behind it. The purpose is still going to be the same. So keep that in mind when we make our family expectations. Our children are watching, and they see everything. We're going to then switch to time. I'm not going to read through it like I did last time. I'm going to give you 5 minutes. Read through it. Reflect on the ones on the bottom, and then after 5 minutes, I will release you for your elbow partner. And if I see you guys kind of finishing up before the 5 minutes, I'll just jump on here and we'll move right along if you don't need that much time. So go ahead and begin, read through those, and begin the questions at the bottom. Turn to your neighbor. Share what you found. I know a lot of you already started. Show me on your fingers, 1, 2, 3 minutes. How much time do you need to finish the discussion part of this? For just time. 1, 2, 3. Seen a lot of twos. You get 2 then. 2 minutes. Turn to that elbow partner or someone else at the table, and share what ones you liked best. Again, get it down to 3. Anything that you thought, hey, I like this, but it needs to be tweaked. It needs to be more or less. And then what you're going to add if there was anything. Go ahead, 2 minutes. All right. Time. I'm back. Hello. Oh, it's you again. Was there a time rule that's hardest to follow for your fam? Hardest? Any of those time rules? Yeah? Okay. So it said one that seemed at least prominent was tech fast. Take that time away from tech around dinner time or maybe bedtime. Setting that space, say, hey, we're going to be tech free. No smartphones at the dinner table might be an example of that. I know I only put 1 hour, and some of you might have been like, whoa, an hour, and some of you might be like, why only an hour? That would be an awesome spot for your family to start the conversation. I say an hour because for some families, that's going to demand a pivot in current action. That's going to be a change that's intentional, that will not happen just from saying it should. You're actually going to have to change some stuff, and that's why I started there. If you want to augment that amount of time or the times of day it impacts, that's great. Please do. Anybody else, any thoughts stand out from you in the timepiece? All right, we're going on to the next one. Place. Where is our technology used in our home and in our lives? Again, you're going to try to get down to 3 or fewer. You might agree with all of them. You might agree with none of them. You do need at least one. Add your own. If you don't like it, you can piecemeal it from parts. Got another 5 minutes. Go ahead and begin. If you haven't yet, turn to your neighbor. Talk it out. 2 minutes. On place. If you haven't yet, turn to your neighbor. Discuss. I know a lot of you already started, so I'm just saying it for the rest of you who are uber rule followers and are patiently waiting for me to say the words. Share with your neighbor or someone else at your table on the place piece. Awesome. Thank you for talking that out. Our next, oh, it's right here on me. Our next one is content. How you feeling on like brain awareness? Do you need a moment to shake it out? Yep, that, exactly. You doing good? Give me a thumbs up if you can move on and still convey thoughts. Your brain is sharp. You don't need more coffee. Cool. I saw some thumbs up. You might already be asleep. Too far gone. Here we go. Content. It's lots of pages. I'm going to give you 8 minutes for content, and we'll finish up with priority and safety as a combo. In this section, we are trying to set some parameters. Again, Philippians 4:8 is the one I keep going back to because I believe it's very clear for us, and it allows yay, nay checkboxes when we're talking about shows and music and games and social media. You're trying to establish in this, what is our standard for what our family is going to enjoy and celebrate? Not just, was it made well? But what is the content? What does it bring out in us? What are we celebrating when this happens? Because there are some things that are beautiful and aren't worth engaging, and there's some things that are tough and they are worth engaging. So how do we make that? How do we discern that? What stage of life are we at right now as a family? You've got 8 minutes to run through this, and you've done so good at it, I'm not even going to jump back on and say share. When you finish your thoughts and you've done your reflection piece, just turn to your neighbor and roll, and I'll check back in. Go. awesome work when we're talking content with your family. What one thing is going to be easiest for your family to address? Is there something you're like, that's going to be easy peasy, we're going to apply this for our family when it comes to content? Or something that you're like, hey, this is going to be we're going to butt heads. We don't all see eye to eye on this. Yes. The process was, might as well delete Netflix now. Are you saying that in a pit of despair, or are you saying that as a realization of what will be beneficial? Okay, thank you. There, absolutely, this. I get people in kind of desperate positions who come to me like, well, what can I watch then? What game can I even play? Right. It's tricky. I understand, but keep in mind that this is our standard. As Christians, we put ourselves under the Word of God and say, this is the standard that I follow in faith. That faith is a verb, it's something I do, it's not just something I feel. So, yeah, we might give up some things that are really valuable to us. Pastimes we enjoy, shows that are important, because they don't match up with the standard we're called to. Our hearts are celebrating something that isn't in line with who Christ has called us to be. And that is hard. I'm not saying it's not. I am saying it counts as removing your right hand or your right eye. It's something that matters to you, that is painful to give up because it's bringing death with it. That's the standard here. This isn't just how can we somehow one-up our friends, be like, oh, you watch that? We don't. Right? Like it's not. We're not trying to just be people who have better rules than the people around us. That's not the premise. Christianity is not religion. It's faith. It's following what God has told us to do because we love God. And therefore, it affects even the shows we enjoy and the music we listen to. That's why I didn't say, well, I did call out that one particular show yesterday. I only called that one out because I found that a very sticky point in people that I love and care about. And they will justify their way around what is clearly pornography in it. If you took Angel Vid or something like that and were to cut out just the gratuitous violence and the pornography from that particular show, you wouldn't have a show to watch. And if you did watch it, the plot wouldn't make sense. Right? Like, there would be no reason to watch it because all the important things were in the parts that will scald your mind and heart. That is what I reference in that specific one. I don't go through a list and call out all of them because I don't consider myself blameless in this. I consider myself still learning and submitting myself to rules on content. So yeah, that is something to think about. Anybody else? Any thoughts? Yeah.
Number two really struck me because I think about the contrast of life before tech and life after, the tech everywhere. And to be anonymous in anything you did in your home was actually, when you think about it, impossible. You would have to go into your room, be alone, and that was weird. So people would either know you're doing something you shouldn't be doing, and they come check on you. So you think about like the magazines you read, they were scattered on the coffee table or on the end table. The people could see what book you were reading,
It wasn't just on a Kindle.
It was tethered to, the room you were in. It was usually a kitchen or family room. So I don't know how other people take that number two because that might be a very painful thing, your anonymity.
Yeah.
But I think that's one that I really want to take to my family because I think it's no secret that, too much social media, poor emotional outcomes, poor relationship outcomes, and going back to something that is more inclusive, everybody's aware of what everybody's doing, it sounds like a really good step in the right direction.
And number two is the live anonymity. That idea that technology often promises us you can be whoever you want and do whatever you want, and it's not going to have any repercussions. We know biblically that's not true, that things whispered in the inner room will be shouted from the rooftops. We also have been long enough that even our promise that cryptocurrency was keeping us completely anonymous is no longer true. AI has caught up with that to the point where the U.S. government is taking back billions of dollars of cryptocurrency and be like, oh, we found you, and we're taking this back now. Thank you very much. Right? Even those things that promise us the independence we so desire, it's not there. The only independence we get is dying to self. And that's something we have to bring to the truth of our personal lives online and expose some things and bring in an accountability with that. So with content, please do keep that in mind. With the next two, priority and safety. Priority is, what are our family priorities? Where are we going to put our time? Where are we going to make space? And what are we going to put on the calendar first? That idea of when we build out our lives, we make sure we make space for God, and then we make space for family, and then we make space for service and mission, and then we make space for work. We're going to put them in the proper order. So how are we going to do that? And then safety is, what rules do we have in place to make sure we don't make silly mistakes that are just known bad choices? I give some specifics in there when it comes to safety, like what kinds of pictures we're going to send. By the way, a great resource for that is Canopy. It would never be a first line of defense, but if you have the financial bandwidth to handle another hedge, Canopy is awesome because it's an AI-driven program that actively scans both what you engage in and what you send and receive on your phones. So it can real-time block porn. Again, secondary measure, especially with young kids in the house, but I do like that option. But if you send or receive images that might be inappropriate, it sends a quick check to an accountability. So, hey, that image may not be appropriate to send. Let's kick that to mom or dad and make sure that they clear it first. I love that as a resource. Again, another small perk of artificial intelligence is it's smart enough to be able to check images like that for us. So Canopy could be an option when we talk about safety, just as it's not written down anywhere else, so I thought I'd add it verbally. We've got 6 minutes for these two. 6 minutes to run through these two, roll right into the conversation piece, and then we'll do the final piece of work today, which is condensing these into something usable. Go ahead and begin. Okay. Priorities and safety. One thing you're going to prioritize as a family, what'd you say? One priority you've got. It got a star for you because it's important to you and your family. Yes. Number 4 on priority, practice proper social habits. Example screens go down when people walk in. This is hard. By the way, you start doing this, people will immediately assume you were doing something inappropriate. That's how uncommon it is. I did this at Starbucks. Someone walked in, I was typing, they knew me. Hi, Nathan. I put my screen down, weirded them out. That's how unusual it is that people do this. So just keep that in mind. It's something we want to make normal, that someone walks in the room and you are forced to pause and acknowledge you might die in that game. That's part of putting a priority on a human. I love this one personally because it's really hard to do, but it's simple but not easy, would be the way I guess I would say that. It's a little thing to do. It's not complicated, but it's not easy to do. How about for safety? What was something you picked for safety? Number 7, tell a caring adult. Young people need to hear this. Tell a caring adult. Absolutely, we want that accountability built in. We want to also have outside boundaries, but knowing who to tell and what to say. We talked yesterday about the Mad Lib style, fill in the blank, mom or dad. And when I was in this location, I saw or experienced whatever it is. We want our kids to know that our goal is not to just get them in trouble, it's to love them well. Certainly, sometimes consequences are part of that, but that Chris McKenna guy from Protect Young Eyes, I love what he says. When your kid self-reports a bad action online, you celebrate like they got straight A's. Because yes, they made that mistake and there's going to be real-life consequences, but not right now. In that moment of honesty, you're going to celebrate because your kid just told you. Knowing it was wrong, they told you on purpose, and that is a huge win for your child's heart and for your relationship, and you do need to celebrate that. It doesn't mean that you just, well, great, everything's fine now. Things need to happen to make this safe and well again. But keep in mind that relationship piece is the priority when coming to a child who's self-reporting. That's a big deal. Yes? Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. That was for number 4. If someone's unsafe online, know what to do. If we're allowing our children to walk into these spaces, we need to let them know what it looks like to be a mandated reporter. That as someone who loves this person, as someone made in the image and likeness of Christ, we go and tell people. Maybe it's for attention. Maybe they don't mean it. That's not our job to decide. We need to know who to go to. I had this happen at a leadership thing I was doing when I was teaching. It was 7th grade summit. There was 9th graders in the room. A girl got up and ran out. She got a text from a friend who said, I'm going to take my life this weekend. She ran and told the principal, who told the counselor, who caught the kid. It was the last Friday of the school year before he got on a bus for the weekend. It wasn't a joke. It wasn't a drill. It wasn't for attention. He went under 48-hour surveillance at the local hospital, but he wasn't alone. This girl and 4 friends went with him, and at the spring break of this year, I got a text from him. He was a sophomore at the University of Washington studying engineering. He was a 9th grader when that happened. He had run out of hope. He didn't believe there was a reason for today or a purpose for tomorrow. And a friend, instead of trying to talk him out of it or argue him out of it or convince him it wasn't worth it, just went and got him help. And that's what we need so many times, is those people oftentimes are putting that out on the internet. They're putting these things out there as this cry for help, and we need to lovingly provide them help. You're not being a narc. You're not being a snitch. I will tell you it's much better to be a real-life friend who cares about that person, that maybe never will speak to them again because they'll be mad at you, than a real-life friend who just gives a really nice talk at a eulogy. I've been on both sides. We do want to take those seriously, and if we're allowing our kids into those spaces, know that stuff happens. So we need to be prepared for them to engage in those conversations with their friends who are broken. Not be the one jumping in and trying to save them from drowning, but calling for help with someone with a boat. right? Professional aid who can support that young person. That's why safety is so critical, and I'm sorry that you've processed that. And it is a real journey. Again, something I like about Bark. Bark will notice that and send you a notification. It's just one more way you can intervene while that's going on. What we have just done is we finish all 6 categories for a family tech framework. That hedge around your family and conversation. If you flip that page, you'll get to the reflect and process. I'm going to actually skip that because we've done a lot of that verbally. That normally wouldn't have happened without someone standing here prompting you. Digital Nathan on the online workshop doesn't do that. So, we go to the great work. Now, we're going to continue now on the great work side, but I also want you to pick a date sometime in the next couple weeks when you're going to come back to this conversation. One time will not set this up forever. You need a date on the calendar. Write it down here and put it in your phone. I'm going to give you 60 seconds to pick that time and put a reminder in your phone when you're going to come back to this sometime in the next 90 days. I'll give you 3 months. You're writing down a date to return to this conversation. You're putting it in your phone with a reminder or writing it on your hand. Because this conversation will change. You'll get home and be like, wait a minute, that didn't work like I'd hoped. You need to return to it. But not like every week. That's exhausting. Got it? You got a time written down? I see it going into phones. That's fabulous. And I'm just going to introduce this next part. We are not doing the entirety of this next part because brain power. If you flip the page, you're looking at 66 and 67. It says finalize your framework. I want to walk you through number 1 because here's what I expect. You went through and you had picked 1 or 2. Or excuse me, you'd picked 3 or fewer rules for each one. I'm going to ask you to pick at 1 or 2, and you'll see there's space for that. You can actually write them out. We really liked this rule for our ground rules for our family. And then on the right, it says example. And I actually write it out because I found as an English teacher, I need to be as specific as possible. So this is my English teacher coming out. I have 2 sentences there. Our family agrees that our behavior needs to reflect our potential as new creations in Christ. That's a summary of multiple of the rules under groundwork that I liked personally for my family. We will self-monitor our tech using Reset. We understand these rules are set in hope, not fear, and will help us love God and use tech well. It was 3 sentences. But in 3 sentences, I've summed up my family's ground rules. You can make it shorter than that. I would not make it longer than 3 sentences. The idea is that we should be able to, as a family, understand that and return to it. When something goes wrong in ground rules, that's what we refer to. Not, under section 1.4. If it starts to sound like you're in the court of law, something is going wrong. Okay? It should sound like a conversation. It should sound like a loving relationship. It should sound like, yeah, we have a standard, but we live the standard. We don't just reference it kind of flippantly. There's somewhere out there. I would like to print this and have it somewhere that we can reference. In 3 months, when we sit down as a family and go, hey, how's it working? We'll read this, not the specific rules. We'll reference the rules to see if we need to augment these sentences at all. If it's too wordy, if you can't remember it when you think back, what are our ground rules? Then change this. Make it shorter. Make it 1 sentence. Make it 10 words. I don't know. It doesn't have to be grammatically correct. Bullet it. But make it work for you. And you're going to do that for each of the 6. So at the end of it, when you finish condensing, you'll have something like 6 to 18 total sentences. 1 to 3 sentences per section. 6 to 18 total sentences that are your family tech framework. Your little family tech manifesto. Your hedge built around your family's culture that ties in with your devices and your network, but it's the heart that drives it. It's the engine that moves the car. I could use all the metaphors I want, but I think you get the picture. And that's what you're going to return to when you finish the conversation in 3 months or 3 weeks, whatever it is for you, so that your family can keep developing. When your 8-year-old becomes a 12-year-old, you'll probably want different standards. They may or may not be more loose. They might be more tight, depending on how it went. And this next conversation we're going to have is, all right, tech trust. We have a framework. We now know the expectations. How do we make sure that I can trust my child well in light of these? And if it doesn't go well, what do I do to adjust? And that'll be what we do next. But first, I'm going to let you stand up and stretch. We're going to take a few-minute break here. We'll come back, and we'll talk about how do we build tech trust to finish this conversation. Thank you, guys. Great job. Good work.